May December. This is Todd Haynes' latest, one of his melodramas, female focus, femme melodramas, you might call them. Excuse me. I think I bumped into the mic there. Anyways, um, I quite enjoyed this movie. You know that when I watched it last night, and at the end of it, I was maybe a little bit lukewarm with about it, but really as it sat with me more, you know, and marinated, it I did start liking it more. Um, and you know, there's a lot to dissect and love about this movie. Um, Basically, it's loosely based, not loosely, but based on a real life tabloid scandal uh, about from the 90s, Mary Kay Letourneau, the teacher who seduced and mm, abused one of her students. Like I think they were 12 year old boy. Yeah, pretty pretty heinous stuff, right? She went to jail. She had uh, his baby in jail. I think two of them. They married, and they eventually did divorce. Um, and then I think she died like a few years after that. Um, but yeah, it's based on that. But it's kind of like, some would call it like a high camp. Some would say it's definitely a melodrama, maybe a big budget or a higher budget version of a Lifetime movie with an auteur touch, cinematic flair, cinematic um, lens of Todd Haynes, which is a pretty well regarded director and definitely up there on probably up there on my list of top directors. Uh, you're probably familiar with Carol, perhaps, that lesbian drama, uh, period piece, Christmassy time with Cate Blanchett and Rooney Mara. He did Far From Heaven, another movie with Julianne Moore. He collaborates with Julianne Moore in a few of his movies, really. Um, that type of style, I would say, um, is what May December is about. And that Natalie Portman plays an actress who's gonna go and spend some time with Julianne Moore's character, who plays, uh, the woman who abused the kid, and who are now married together. And she goes to hang out with them and study to really get to know, this character, and to play a role in an upcoming indie movie, right? Um, and so the movie is really kind of like investigating both the psychology of people who abuse, the victims of that abuse, but also the people who want to be entertained by these scandalous stories, whether it's through tabloids or through uh, developing these TV shows or movies based on these true crime situations, and get entertainment out of that, particularly through the viewpoint of the actress played by Natalie Portman here, and her her psyche and her journey through trying to grasp this woman's character and embody that, and what type of people, what type of person would do that, would be into that. Um, it gets pretty emotional, pretty intense, and some say it gets funny, and there is some humorous moments in it that one can read as like campy moments, winking to the audience, referencing soap operas. Particularly I think it's because of a very prominent score that comes on every now and then to emphasize a particular moment, usually an exaggerated emotional moment from Julianne Moore's character, a funny line. So it heightens that moment, kind of like makes you giggle a bit. But I think Todd Haynes never intended it to be campy. You know, he was just doing. It's almost kind of like. It's almost like an homage, really, to lifetime soap opera movies or shows about such scandalous things. But yeah, great performances all around. Definitely recommend it if you're into this sort of thing. But let's get into the actual breakdown and go scene by scene. Really, just gather our thoughts as we go through, as we do. The opening is pretty cool, right? We got butterflies. So, this butterfly is a common motif in movies in general, right? In storytelling, the metamorphosis, the beauty. There's definitely, beauty is a big aspect of this movie. It's shot quite beautifully, indeed. It's we got some beautiful actors in here, and their use of beauty to either take control of their relationships or take command of people's attention, whether it's in movies or whether it's in relationships. The metamorphosis of the butterfly, a lot of these characters are going through metamorphosis, some taking longer than others. Natalie is her character is actually an actress who partakes in transformation on screen all the time. And these two, I would say, are kind of stuck in a state of arrested development, right? We got an intro here of a nice little cookout where they're gonna invite Natalie's character. Let's remember their names. What are their names again? Maybe we should call them by. Elizabeth is Natalie's character. Gracie is Julian's character, and Joe is Charles Melton. Gracie and Joe are the married couple, the scandalous married couple, the May December romance, which means a romance with a big, huge age gap. And so they're inviting Elizabeth to come over. The whole family's there. This friend here is like, oh yeah, I remember seeing that actress Elizabeth in a movie. Admits that he just looked up a nude scene or something like that. Didn't really watch the movie. And so here arrives the actress. Comes in to bring a package for them, like, hey, this is up on your porch. Turns out to be a big old shit, literally. A prank they are accustomed to, because people hate them. But they seem quite happy here, don't they? And so here's where we or at least start to dig deeper into this relationship, right? And through Elizabeth's character, the audience is like, okay, let's really get to know what's happening here. It's a tabloid story, a tabloid scandal that shook the nation. This scene, I guess, this guy Joey is the first instance of like, okay, maybe he's actually attracted to this actress. it's funny because his friend was saying how they looked up a sex scene or something, and that's how they're familiar with the actress, and he's like looking at a commercial. This I think it's actually a real commercial Natalie did, right? Of some kind of skin cream or moisturizer or something. And you can interpret that different ways. Maybe that's just one of the scenes he's been looking at, but it definitely an indication of the marriage isn't completely solid rock solid, right? She's right here complaining about his smell. He should have showered. Stunk up the sheets. He puts on some maybe perfume or lotion or something to freshen up a bit. But again, she's being a bit melodramatic, as is the character, and as is the style of the story. And I think, is this the first time we hear besides the credits, the music? Maybe not. Yeah, it is actually. So like that score pops in to transition to a lot of these moments to punctuate kind of like the absurdity of the matter, the perhaps the exaggerated emotions that Gracie is exhibiting here, right? Connecting it to maybe a soap opera type of style. And so the moments like that, and I think earlier that we skipped that point, there was a scene people bring up a lot, is a scene where Gracie is opening the fridge, and she's like, we might not have enough hot dogs, something like that, right? For the cookout. And then that also plays in that point, right? When she like it zooms in, she's like looking at she's opened up the refrigerator. She says that line, and then boom, that soundtrack comes in again. But those are just like indications that I can see how like people can see, yeah, that's like, say, that's pretty campy, it's like self-aware, of its campiness, and the bombastic soundtrack really just emphasizes that. And I don't think I really laughed out loud in those moments. I just kind of was kind of like put in the mood of like, okay, this is what this is a genre movie, even almost like a melodrama genre movie, It just sets you in the mood. Here I think he's like talking to one of his friends on his Facebook group. He has a Facebook group about butterflies and raising monarch butterflies. Another indication of, he's interested in perhaps seeing other people, because he was, abused by her when he was 13, and hasn't really been with anybody else this whole time, right? So that's one thing that we'll see later in a more intense scene, in the fight scene between them in the bedroom. But one thing this movie is clear to do is to showcase, hey, like, this is pretty fucked up what's going on. It doesn't really glamorize the romance between them two, between the married couple, between the abuser and the abused. Like so many TV shows and films from the 90s have done, Dawson's Creek had an episode where like a teenager was in love with was going out with a teacher. We had different plots like that throughout, even as recently as Riverdale. A student and a teacher romance was prominent in that show, who, by the way, also had this actor in it, Charles here. So I didn't really watch that Riverdale. I've seen a few episodes, but so I'm not too familiar. But people are really into and surprised by Charles Melton's performance here compared to his stuff at CW, right? Here's the first maybe flirtatious moment that Georgie and Elizabeth have. Georgie, why do I say Georgie? Joe. Georgie is the first son of Gracie, of Julian's character from the previous marriage, who will come up pretty soon. And so here we're still trying to figure out what kind of person Elizabeth is, right? Obviously, she's, as we see throughout the film later on, her main focus is the performance. She plays the kind of like a good guy character who has this outwardly appearance of being considerate and wants to be liked, and has charisma, is charismatic. But deep down, she doesn't seem too concerned about the family here she's getting involved with. She just wants to siphon as much information as possible to develop her performance. So it's not just Elizabeth that's a little bit conniving and menacing in this movie. Like, she's as someone, as she's trying to play her, learn to become her in a way, to do that in the way she does it, she's also similarly menacing, similarly evil in a way. Probably not, you wouldn't say not as bad as Grace herself, but but definitely sociopathic in a way, as we'll see as the film continues. And so that's what's probably the most fascinating part of the movie, really, is just these two, and these two in conversation, trying to figure out, as the audience, what's in their heads and stuff. Here we have Gracie kind of displace, again, a type of personality that is kind of unaware, like of how she appears and what she's saying, and how she affects the people around her. This is her daughter with Joe, and she's commenting on, this is a dress that she's picking out for a graduation, and she's like, it's like a backhanded compliment where she's like, oh, I'm so proud of you for being so courageous to wear a dress that shows off your arms like that. I would never have done that. You're a modern woman now. I would have been so self-conscious of those arms. Because she's not as thin as probably the ideal is, which is just silly, but whatever. But that makes her feel, obviously that makes her feel bad, and makes her feel self-conscious. And so she goes to change to a different one. But, Gracie is definitely unaware. She's not, she didn't think that was a bad thing to say, or didn't think it would affect her daughter as much. And here we have Elizabeth definitely picking up on that. So again, just some subtle indications of the personalities at work here. And here we get to the pet store where the abuse originated, which is unlike the actual real life story, in which it was a student and the teacher, right? I think they were caught in a car or something. But in this movie, it's Gracie's character worked at this store, at this pet shop, and Joe was like a part-time worker here, after school situation. And this is the storage room where that took place, the incident that started it all. And it's definitely uncomfortable, this scene. And because we're going into Natalie Portman's or Elizabeth's mindset here of like, okay, she's trying to like reimagine time, the specific place and time of that abuse, of that first encounter between Gracie and Joe. And as an audience too, you can kind of feel how this would have been a very memorable, indelible moment in these people's lives, right? I mean, just like the sounds of the crickets and the crickets and just the different animals, it's very jungle-like, very, very, I guess, steamy and passionate atmosphere and vibe, right? And she gets into it, she channels that energy and starts writhing on the floor here in ecstasy, which is, in her mind is like, oh, she's, and as an audience member too, like, oh, she's an actor, actors can be a little weird when they're trying to get into a role, right? It's not that weird that this is happening, but it's also like, how much is she enjoying this? How much is she into it? She does laugh a little bit, but it's definitely a weird, awkward, scene to witness. But this is the kind of person she is, right? She's a sort of a method actor almost, right? Trying to really get into that role as deep as she can. And again, we have the score come up here as she laughs and realizes this is kind of ridiculous. It gives us a little bit more empathy with the character, right? Because like she herself is aware, yeah, this is kind of a ridiculous situation I'm putting myself in, and what I'm doing here is just weird and funny in that way. And so is that again another, you can read this from the director, another indication like, oh yeah, let's put the music here, the melodrama, she laughs, this is a weird scene, cue audience laughter. I imagine people in the theater would be laughing at this, right? Just this heightened, melodramatic, scandalous moment of this actress reenacting it in her head, the actual abuse. It's like pretty dark humor too at the same time, right? But yeah, you can call that camp. I would, maybe there's a new word for it. Maybe it's more like dark camp. I don't know. And then here we have, again, texting. Joe's texting. He's reminiscing, I think, to those photos as well. This other random person, right? I don't think we ever see this person. Let's see how bad things are. Oh, that's like something else. Yeah, it's just the butterfly folk on the Facebook. Trying to find some connection elsewhere. And then Gracie, she's busy with her cakes because that's how she stays busy and employed, I guess. She has some friends who are constantly asking her for, or are constantly getting cake orders done, for her sake, to keep her busy. I think it's the first time we see Elizabeth's character with the asthma machine going, which will come into play later in the movie. She's seeing, casting calls, these casting videos of potential, boy actors for the upcoming role. Of course, at this point you're like, yeah, now that we're actually seeing these kids, it just feels even creepier, more and more uncomfortable, because we're so used to seeing a grown Joe in the relationship, and now like we're reminded, hey, when this happened, this is how he was as young as this kid, so damn. And obviously we can tell she doesn't feel like those kids work out. It doesn't feel like those kids are the best for the role. So we go to Joe's work here, and we get a moment, the second moment of sexual tension. Are they gonna hook up here? Is she the kind of person who's like, okay, I'm gonna, in order to really fully understand this character I'm gonna play, I'm gonna have to actually sleep with Joe to actually, experience that, viscerally, to improve my performance. Is she gonna go there? Not quite yet. And he of course didn't really. There was certainly a lot of tension there, but he didn't initiate anything at the moment, right? And now, Grace is gonna go and talk to other old friends of Gracie's. I think this is a neighbor of Gracie growing up, to get more background on like what the community felt about this whole situation. And this is where we get introduced to Gracie's first son from her first husband, who's now as the consequences of her, this neighbor here reminds Elizabeth here, like, yeah, this son here, who's called Georgie, is a prime example of what Gracie wrought, like what the consequences of her actions also affected, her family as well, and how Georgia here has gone through some tough growing pains, and bullying, etc., because of what happened, and he's been shook ever since, right? Now, is he like this because of what Grace did, and how that affected the family, or was he always going to turn out this way? In a way, it's hard to say, but definitely had a big effect on them, but maybe he's also demonstrating some of the bad flaws genetically of Gracie, right? And how he like mistreats people. He like, early on he threw a drink at his drummer, to critique him because someone in the crowd was heckling them. So does shitty stuff like that, right? And just his attitude in general. I felt like when I first saw the scene, I felt like, okay, maybe this performance here is a little bit too exaggerated. The whole idea of like him flipping the chair around, like the classic cool dude, sits on, puts the chair on the other way, leans against the backrest like that. But I guess it's just a quick way to show like this is like a too cool for school type of character, right? But he's pretty outspoken, talks about how it messed up his life, what his mother did, and we'll be seeing more of him. In general, though, I think Corey Michael Smith, an actor, plays Georgie there. Uh, pretty overall good performance, particularly later on too. I think people are kind of um, missing out on or forgetting about. The focus, of course, is on Charles Melton here, on Natalie Portman, on Julianne Moore. But I think all around, like, there's a really good cast. So here he's talking to his dad. They don't communicate very well. Just indication of like what is probably how he grew up with him, like his life with him growing up was kind of like this probably. Not very communicative. And now the actor has to go and check out what the school was like for Joey growing up, right? Kids are noticing this big time actor come in, trying to show off and stuff. And she comes to speak at this drama class with Joe's daughter in the audience there, or as a class student in the class. And of course, the troublemaker kid asks about sex scenes in movies, and we get Elizabeth here, discussing how like it is she's pretty candid about this question about answering what it's like to do sex scenes. And it's a bit weird. It's a bit perhaps maybe a little bit odd, particularly with the teacher in the room and all these young kids talking about sex so frankly. But she's she doesn't seem to be bothered or aware of that, the tension in the room. And she just mentions how sometimes you can't, you have to like, sometimes it's choreographed, sometimes there's a lot, there's always a lot of men in the room, so it's awkward at times. But then other times she gets confused because, like, is she acting pleasure or is she actually feeling pleasure? Because sometimes it can get pleasurable, or there's chemistry with the actor, sometimes there isn't. So it's a state of confusion sometimes, performing, for people, especially when it comes to pleasurable performances, right? When it comes to sex. And she's pretty open about that. And pretty interesting scene, but again, it's like she's not quite aware of how it's affecting, Joe's daughter here in the audience, who definitely feels, uncomfortable in the idea that, like, oh, she thought she was, she seems to looked up to this character, to this actress, right? To Elizabeth's character. But here she's starting to realize, like, oh, maybe she's just taking advantage of us. She's not. She's just using the opportunity to improve her own career, and doesn't really care so much about us, Then they switch to a different question. She asks about the type of character she wants to play and why she chooses them. And that's the point. Yeah, that's the point where, like, the daughter's like questioning how she feels about Elizabeth, because she's basically saying how, like, yeah, sometimes I do want to play awful characters because those are the interesting characters. It's very interesting to get through, to experience and delve deep into these gray areas. They're the most exciting characters for her to play, even, So then the daughter's probably thinking, oh wait, so you're saying my mom's a bad person, and that's why you want to play her? And just starts to get self-conscious about her place in all this, and what it means about her family if this actress is coming here to play this sordid, scandalous story of this evil woman. She runs out of the car upset, and it seems like she was gonna try to console her, but I don't think she does. What she's really interested in is taking notes. She wants to really get to know to the last detail. How Gracie does make her makeup, what products she uses, to emulate that exactly. This is a good scene for actors, right? Like, I was thinking, like, how many takes they have to do this, because like she's putting on the makeup while they're talking, sometimes even applying, some gloss or lipstick on her lips while she's talking and doing those lines, so it just must be, how choreographed is it, or was it just kind of just, let's just improvise a little bit. But it's almost kind of like this is the first moment where we see them side by side like this with the same makeup. Just a visual indicator, like, hey, she's trying to become her. It starts to get even a little bit creepy, almost like, hey, Gracie's here, and also her double is here. And like that soundtrack there, again, you can read it as campy, you can read it as like melodramatic soap opera-y, an homage to soap operas. But I watched this with my sister, and I think she said even that it kind of felt almost like horror, like that soundtrack, that musical cue in there, and it kind of is a little bit creepy, right? He is, he's the victim here, right? And here we have the original, the original predator who hunted him, right, in a way, and a double, almost like a mirror image of that abuser in the same house, and he has to just accept this as just regular life. Like, no, there's no issues here. And there's no why should I feel uncomfortable? So there's like this unsettling creepy vibe throughout, as the film continues, and as Elizabeth starts to morph and metamorphosize, maybe, go into cocoon, come out as a different version of Gracie. And it's true, Charles Martin does play this role pretty well. Like, again, I haven't seen too much of his work, but just his mannerisms here, like the way he has his hands and stuff, it's like you can tell he's like uncomfortable and nervous, and that's something he acts like even in front of how he acts even in front of Gracie, right? It feels like a kid who isn't quite sure, how to portray himself in front of this adult figure, and he wants to not mess up or do something wrong, so like that power imbalance that he's always had with Gracie continues, into his adulthood and even with other people. So again, he's like stuck in the state of arrested development. And so I think, Charles Martin definitely portrays this very well in its way, portrays it in a clear way, I think, that seems, authentic. And here again playing, you know, the coddling husband who, just wants to make sure his wife is taken care of 100% and does as she says, and wants to make sure he gets approval from her, as an adult, as a teacher figure or adult figure. He's still, and they're still like ages apart, right? What is it, like 20-year age difference? A little more than that, maybe. And so, she's upset because of her cakes. People are stopped ordering her cakes, and she has to throw them away. So again, some more melodrama from Gracie's character, showing that she's a little bit, definitely unhinged, and in a way even kind of childlike herself. How emotional she gets for like silly little things. And yeah. And so we go back to Elizabeth, and I think she's talking to one of the producers of the film or something. I think the director actually says, director laughs, director of the film, and she wants to stay longer, to get to know them better, to get to know Gracie better. And so I think they give her a couple more days or something, and she mentions she saw the casting videos of the kids, and I think she says, like, she wants, none of them match what she's looking for. She wants, I think she says it's sexy. She wants someone sexier, which is an odd thing to say about, child actors, but she's justifying it by like saying like, oh, like, have you seen this Joe character? This guy Joe, like, he's pretty sexy right now, and I'm sure he was when he was younger too. So again, like an indication of like, oh yeah, she's a bit detached from the reality here. She's fully into this character now, almost, and even identifying and seeing like, with Gracie's point of view of like, oh, this was a very seductive, kid, it's not my fault, he seduced me, type of idea. Like that's like what she wants from the cast in the movie. And he's even watching here. This seems to be like a previous TV movie or something about the scandal, right? So she has that in the background to study. And it looks like, a cheaply made, worse than Lifetime almost, schlocky exploitive film, about that incident. And you would think that, okay, Elizabeth is like, okay, we're gonna make a better movie. It's gonna be actually a lot more insightful and a lot higher quality version of the story, and she has to live up to that. So that's her main focus and goal, right? And here's an interesting scene with Joe and his son together, and apparently Joe's never smoked weed. And I guess the scene is just the idea of like, oh look, like Joe missed out on some rebellious adolescent times in his life. He missed out on that because of Gracie, and now he's like bonding with his son smoking his first joint, at age 36 or something, uh, with his like teenage son. Just to illustrate, like, yeah, like he's he hasn't developed fully, as a person. And he feels that here, and he's starting to come to terms with it, And I think that's why he took the puff, He's like, I gotta experience this. I gotta move forward in my life, maybe, maybe without Gracie. And here they're just uh, she's learning how to bake pies or cakes. I think it was a cherry cake. And then there's this letter, kind of like Gracie wants to show Elizabeth that, like, hey, like, this kid actually loved me back then. Like, there was true love back then, right? So it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how old he was. Showing off this little poem, right, that people would write. Of course, like, a kid writing this means nothing more than puppy love that Grace shouldn't acted on, but she did because she's a lunatic, right? And a little bit of a light-hearted scene, comedy scene here of Joe being all high, but he's expressing, he's trying to express himself in a deeper way with his son and trying to connect, and he's insecure about the idea of, like, I think he says, like, I'm afraid I don't know if this is a good memory for you or not, if I'm giving you a bad memory or not, because he wants to be a good father, perhaps compensating for how his father wasn't communicated with him, so. But again, he's stuck in the state of arrested development, so he's having growing pains with it, and troubles getting there. But I think, like, his son, like, is understanding, he gets it. To him, it's probably just a funny dad moment for him, but I think it is. I think it will be a meaningful and a good memory in general. Hopefully an indication of better memories in the future they'll make together, right? And now the other daughter comes back, right? They pick her up from her college, or I think she arrives in the airport, and she's actually a little bit more annoyed with the whole situation, right? She's more abrasive and critiques Elizabeth head on. It's like, why exactly are you here? Why? I mean, are you really gonna tell the truth about our family? So it's good to have this other perspective come in. And of course, then later, the older family comes by to say hello. Because, oh yeah, remember, Gracie had a husband before the whole affair with Joe. She had kids, and there's Georgie in the back there. Makes a funny comment about, oh, the old family's gonna go in the back. We'll be over there. But stay here with your new one, blah blah blah. And then I think this is her daughter, Grace's daughter, just compliments Elizabeth, for her role in whatever soap opera she was in. I'm a big fan, etc., etc. Which I think is not actually the role she wants to be remembered by, Elizabeth. I think that's why she's doing this. she wants to elevate her career and her, be considered more of a prestige actress, I imagine, right? That's what she hopes to do. And so this is the second bathroom mirror scene of them two. And we get a revealing moment here where Gracie here, well, first of all, she asks, like, how many brothers do you have? And Gracie kind of starts figuring out, like, yeah, Elizabeth here isn't fully 100% truthful. She calls her out. It's like, yeah, you knew how many brothers I had. No reason to ask that question. But he also says that, like, yeah, I'm naive, but that's a good quality, right? It's worked out for me. Always been, in a way, it's been a gift, she says. In that, I guess, she was naive about the whole situation with seducing Joe and abusing him, of course. But her naive image, I guess, helped her get a lesser prison sentence, and she was able to continue life with him, and they married. And and I think people think she is a bit naive, and that's why they cut her some slack. So I think she takes advantage of that image, but you could probably argue that she's not as naive as she's letting on. And definitely later on, she does seem a little more calculating in a later scene. And so now Joe's gonna drop her off, but first we got Georgia here, who drops a bombshell here. Is that what it's called? Drops some info where he tells her that Gracie was actually abused by her brothers growing up, and that's what really fucked her up, and that's what led her on to doing, repeating that abuse. And Elizabeth is shocked, right? She's like, "Wait, that explains things?" But again, she's an actor, right? So maybe she isn't that shocked, or maybe she's like, "This guy is just lying," because his intentions really are to get a job as a music supervisor for the movie, and he's actually naive too, and thinks he can get away with that and get a job that way. Luckily, Joe comes in time, and she's like, "Oh, well, I'll think about that. I'll look into that." He threatens her though by saying that he'll go to the public and go public with that little tidbit of info he read in apparently Gracie's diary, and probably talk bad about the whole situation, and probably talk bad about Elizabeth. So I don't know. I feel like that threat was kind of like not really that real of a threat, and he wasn't really gonna. I don't think he's really gonna do that, but I don't know. Who knows? Maybe. But he's kind of like a jerk kind of character, anyways. As we saw earlier. So who knows what he's gonna do. But it's not really addressed in the movie at the end. It's not that important. She obviously doesn't feel like it's that big of a deal. She doesn't take him too seriously. And so now, I think Gracie told, in a previous scene, Gracie told Elizabeth that Joe's sister had an asthma problem. And so here's when we see the first real moment that is clearly manipulation by Elizabeth, to get something, right? She tells him like, "Oh yeah, I have this asthma machine. Can you help me with it?" Oh, I can't figure out how it works. Comes up naturally, and he's like, "Sure." But of course, she planned to bring that up to get him upstairs. And now this is this moment where that sexual tension breaks, and they actually get close. He gives her a letter first, because he's really, starting to really like Elizabeth here. Feels like maybe she can provide some. She can speak on the truth of the matter of his relationship with Gracie, and be a good vehicle for that in the movie. So he's starting to trust her, right? And so he gives her this letter, which is, I imagine it's a love letter, right? It's a love letter he wrote to Gracie when he was a kid, and probably illustrates better his emotions at the time, right? Which would be pretty pivotal for her performance. And then they get together. They feel that tension is broken, and they have sex. He thought it was pretty exciting. He was pretty excited. He apparently has been very loyal to Gracie, and this is the first time he's cheated on her. But he feels relieved in a way, like he probably sees it as like, yeah, it's not, I slept with Elizabeth, but she's kind of like another version of Gracie. She's like almost like a doppelganger, right? She's gonna play her, so maybe it's not that bad. But of course, Elizabeth, as the mental adult here, versus Joe, who's still mentally a kid in a way, and stunted because of this abuse. This particular character is, she takes this. She doesn't take this whole situation that seriously. That, she's more detached. While he feels like, wait, that was just because you wanted to get, you just want to get emotional. You wanted to do this for your role. I thought perhaps that you liked me. He asks, or he wonders. And she's all about the story. She wants to get to the truth of the story, and this will help her. And he thinks that she's being exploitative, and it's actually his real life. It's not a story to him. And so of course he gets upset. He thought there was something more to this, but we get the first revelation, and probably a very important character growth moment for Joe here, to realize that shit, like, I shouldn't have trusted her. And she even says, like, this is what grown-ups do, justifying her actions by playing the adult here. Just a little fling, no big deal. And she immediately starts reading that little letter, when he goes to shower, or I think he leaves. No time to waste. Gotta get she has to read the letter and get invested in those memories right after the moment, right after having sex with him. Of course she's doing it. She's living this life of Gracie with the privilege of him being in the convenience of the privilege she has with the convenience, and also what I'm trying to say. She's doing this while he's an adult, like after the fact that he's already been through it. He's like, so in a way she's kind of re-abusing him, but she feels okay with it because he's an adult now, so he should be fine. Like he should. It's not. She's not bad for doing this. She probably has in her mind, right? It's just part of the role, but she doesn't realize that like it's fucking him up still, and he's still going through this trauma. And here we have him actually, coming to terms with him and actually confronting Gracie about it. He wants to talk about it. He wants to go back and discuss like they haven't before ever, why she did that, why she, what it meant, if perhaps maybe he was too young. He probably starts thinking now, like, maybe you should have not, reciprocated, my desires. Maybe, even if you think I seduced you, it's up to you as the adult to reject that, And he, even like again his mannerisms, Charles Martians does a really good job here. Charles Melton. Everything is like he's like a blubbering kid, trying to make sense of it all, with a mommy slash girlfriend figure or wife figure, mommy slash wife figure. And of course, Gracie doesn't see anything wrong. She is like, you're the one who seduced me. She doesn't think the age mattered at all. She's probably wondering why you're bringing this up now, And she acts like you're ruining the night, tomorrow's graduation. You're being ridiculous. And she asks who was in charge, completely delusional at this point. Who was the boss? Like, you were in charge, Gracie. But she points towards this blubbering kid, thinks, saying that he was the one who was in charge. And, you probably also you could also see it as in a way a sexist trope, the idea that because he was a boy or a young man, he, therefore he, all boys and young men would want to willingly, have sex with an older woman no matter what. It didn't matter, and would take charge. They wouldn't like feel like they were abused just because he was a boy, a man, or a young boy. Or the idea that, maybe because typically, males take the penetrative role in sex within hetero sex. Perhaps she sees him as the one that instigated and the one that was in control in that way. But of course, she's twisting it all up. And she doesn't really want to listen to him. She doesn't really want to even critique or question herself, in her actions. And that was like the climactic moment for them too, really, because after that, everything is different. Everything changes. And here we just get a great scene of Natalie acting, trying to fully embody Gracie. She's doing her voice, she has like a little lisp with like the way she talks. It's not quite exactly what Julianne Moore is doing, but it's getting there, right? She's trying to emulate that. So that's kind of interesting to see here. But yeah, overall, great performance. And now we have the butterfly coming out, fully transformed. Joe has matured. He actually opened up about his feelings and emotions about the pivotal moment in his life where his life was taken away from him in a way, and confronted Gracie. Didn't quite go how he wanted, but it didn't quite go how he wanted. But I think he passed the threshold, and I think he's starting to really see, like, okay, he has maybe a future without Gracie now. And, in real life they do end up divorcing, so you know this takes place in a time period where they haven't gotten there yet. But as the audience, we can be like, okay, yeah, this is a growing moment for Joe here, as he lets the butterfly go free. And that's in contrast to what we'll see later when Elizabeth, not Elizabeth, when Gracie comes upon a fox in the woods. Well, right about here, right? As they're off to the graduation, Gracie's doing her hunting, and I think she mentioned she hunted quails for the dinner the previous night. Here she comes upon a fox. Joey let a butterfly fly free, while she stares at this fox with a gun, contemplating her role in this world as perhaps a predator. Perhaps is she realizing that she's controlling, not letting people go, not letting Joe go, but she's always and will always want to take control of people for her own pleasure and benefit. Hunting in the woods, about to shoot this cute little fox, defenseless little fox who represents Joe. I feel like at this moment, perhaps she doubts herself, but it's fleeting, right? I think it's fleeting. I think after this, she's all more content at the graduation. I feel like it's just a fleeting moment, and she's back to her normal self, which is that the role of a predator, the role of perhaps a little bit naive, unaware abuser, and who wants to have the power over Joe, over her husband in her life, and takes advantage of the fact that she has all these years above him, right? Ahead of him. And so the graduation goes well, though obviously they're not. Gracie and Joe are not together, symbolizing, I guess, indicating that this is the end for them. They're going their separate ways. I did, wonder that perhaps there might have been a missing scene here. It did feel like a little bit abrupt. There's something missing here between this scene and the next, where or even before Joe left to drop off the kids, did they have another discussion? Did they decide to separate? It's unclear, and maybe that's intentional. But he gets pretty emotional here, seeing his kids graduate. Perhaps he feels like, okay, they made it through high school without going through the shit I went through, and they're gonna have a better life than me. So he feels some pride in that, and hope for his kids, while Gracie here is just oblivious to it all, oblivious to Joe's emotional arc there. But then we get a moment of how calculating is Gracie here, and is she really as naive as she portrays herself. She comes up to Elizabeth here, and this is the final moment. that they're together, hoping that the film will go well, maybe represent her in a better light than before. But she does reveal that, like, hey, I hope you don't believe what Georgie said about that's the awful story about my brothers abusing me. She says, right? So she knows that Georgie had that told Elizabeth that, and she says, "Oh, I talk to Georgie all the time," so that's why she knows that, right? And so this is an interesting scene because, like, what does that mean? Does that mean that Georgie and Elizabeth are kind of in cahoots a bit? I don't know. Maybe, I don't know. It seems that they've always been apart, but I guess one idea I had right now was just that Georgie or Elizabeth told Georgie to say that in order for Georgie to get a job on the film and to get in the in crowd for the film and maybe have more control that way. She'd have control through Georgie. I don't know. It's up to your interpretation. It's not really clear because obviously, we see that Georgie has been largely affected and is very distant from his mother, right? But it is an unusual. I don't know what he's doing telling you those things. He told you. She says she talks to him every day. Insecure people are very dangerous, right? She calls herself secure. So in a way, she's like, she's at least putting doubt in at the very least putting doubt in Elizabeth's mind. George is insecure and he's gonna tell lies, and don't use that as part of your performance because that's not true. I am a good person is what she's trying to at least demonstrate there at the very least, right? And we do see that Elizabeth is definitely shocked, and I think this is authentic shock here. Like she's, I think she maybe did believe Georgie in the end, right? And now she's like questioning it. I don't know. But here we have the actual movie being shot. A little bit of meta commentary, right? Because we are watching a movie of a movie. And it seems a little bit more glamorous, right, than the actual Gracie and Joe, and it looks a little bit, into my eyes, it looks a little bit too similar to that bad TV drama she was watching of this incident, of this scandal to prepare, and then earlier scene, right? Yeah, it's a little bit better lighting and it looks a little bit more put together, but it doesn't seem as prestige or as high quality as maybe she would want it to be, and what she was trying to portray it as to other people throughout the movie. Because the thing is that they do like 3 takes, and then the director's like, okay, that's good, let's move on. And that line in particular isn't that prestige. It's just like typical line you would hear in the type of Lifetime movies, right? Maybe there's other more intense, authentic scenes, but this seems very like a sensationalized scene. It's okay to be scared. Comparing the moment to a snake bite, right? Kind of glamorizing it versus really like getting into the perspective of Joe. She wants to be the focus, which if you were gonna do a real take on this story, like May December maybe is doing, you would want to give more perspective to Joe's character and give more insight on his mindset. And then she asked for a fourth take because she wants to do it, a very particular way. She wants to give it, she wants to have like an Oscar-winning performance. She wants the best performance. Even though I think the directors and the filmmakers here of this particular, of this movie, are probably satisfied with just that those standard takes, like are satisfied with that and just want to move on. Maybe it's more of a paycheck for them situation. They don't take it. It doesn't seem like they're taking it as seriously as Elizabeth here is. So in the end, it's just kind of like demonstrates that, like, yeah, Elizabeth was doing all this, involved herself in the lives of these people who have, particularly Joe, who have suffered all these years for the sake of a performance that really doesn't mean anything, that isn't really going to make a dent in her career, really isn't going to mean much, isn't going to turn out to be that great of a movie. It's just a schlocky exploitive film, for the sake of getting some viewers on some TV channel or something. That's not seriously gonna tackle the abuse of what Joe's abuse, or the seriousness of the incidents of what happened, or really delve deep into Gracie's psyche even, or character. Just gonna be like another cliche, melodrama. I think that's really the the main message of the movie, right? But it's also encased and captured in the dreamy femme style that Todd Haynes likes to work with, right? This heightened melodrama and tale, but also unlike the movie Elizabeth is doing, actually focuses in on all these characters' psyches, and actually sheds light on Joe's mental state, on the abused kid's mental state. Unlike, as opposed to a glamorous look of a scandal, as kind of like what a tabloid would do. So very interesting. It definitely is a movie that it probably improves on repeated viewings, because you get at the end you get a better understanding of what Natalie Portman's character is like. So seeing it repeating, going back to the beginning and seeing it again, it gives you a little different perspective and a different light. Here's the scene I was talking about, right? Of her going to the fridge. That illustrates, like, that demonstrates, oh, maybe this is intentionally a campy comedy. Just a zoom in, and then I don't think we have enough hot dogs.
I don't think we have enough hot dogs.
It's almost like, it reminds me of like, the soap operas you would see in the Twin Peaks TV series. There was like a fake soap opera in there, or stuff like that. Obviously they have enough hot dogs. But yeah, that's May December. Is it high camp? A pastiche of melodramas? A horror story about our fascination with true crime and scandalous tabloid stories? All the above, you decide, but it's well acted, and and quite fascinating. Yep. May December.